Hi, Emma Walsh here, joining you with Lawrence Mitchell, the CEO of Wellbeing at Work. And we're here to chat about the upcoming November summit in Sydney and Melbourne. So, Lawrence, it's been 10 years since Wellbeing at Work was founded, very much with a purpose-driven mission to revolutionise the future of work. Now, I know today it's a global movement and you run progressive summits around the world. Why is wellbeing such a future of work imperative for you?
It's interesting, because I've been doing this work now for a decade, and first of all, Emma, it's wonderful to be here. I know that you're super busy, and we've got our conference in a couple of weeks' time, so there's just a million things to do. So I'm glad we could make the space. But it's interesting because when you do have a decade of experience, you look back and you think, wow. 10 years ago, so it was 2014, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but when it comes to the context of work, a lot has happened. Of course, that was pre-pandemic, and right at the beginning, I would say well-being at work wasn't really understood. You could argue it's potentially not fully understood today either, but back then it was very physical, so it was very much focused on physical health and safety. And then what we saw over the following years was this awareness that we're not just a physical body, but we actually have a mind, and therefore cognitive well-being is really important. And we saw a lot of in our conferences, a lot of senior leaders coming out, if you like, talking about their own episodes with mental illness. So up until the pandemic, I would say that whenever we use the words mental health, we assumed that meant mental illness. What the pandemic showed us, and there's always a blessing and a curse with any experience, but what the pandemic taught us is that we've all got mental health, we've all got mental well-being, and if people are put under a lot of pressure, a lot of change, then the impacts on their brains, on their minds, can result in exhaustion and burnout, which is exactly what we're seeing now. So now there's more of an awareness that we are whole people. That's certainly the way we look at it. So the mind and the body and the emotions, the heart, if you like, are not disconnected. And from a leadership point of view, when we have that awareness and we recognize that, then of course we can start to create very different workplaces. So we're still in this period of change, and big companies are unlearning, let's say, some of the practices, some of the leadership practices and disciplines, best practices that they would have learned earlier in their career. So now well-being, I would argue, is moving from this peripheral topic. 10 years ago, well-being was thought of as, let's do some yoga classes, let's maybe organize some Pilates. Where I worked, there was a bus that picked everyone up and took them swimming. This type of thing was very much thought of as the well-being plan. Now it's much more central. So I feel that well-being has the opportunity to move center stage simply because we're at a point now where many senior leaders, many progressive leaders understand that well-being is the other side of performance. So if you want a high performance culture, if you want your people to really perform at their best, then you have to take well-being seriously. And what we do through our work is give well-being structure and voice so that ultimately senior leaders, CFOs get it, because I understand the pressures of CFOs. CFOs have got many demands. They have to invest the company's resources in a responsible way. So why are they going to invest in well-being when you've got AI and you've got all these other demands? So that's how well-being now needs to have a lot more, it needs to be a lot more tangible so that we can have that business conversation. And well-being as the power behind performance is the theme of our conferences this year.
Yeah, it's very much in line with our mission here at Parents at Work around helping people thrive at work and at home, because work is just so much more fluid and flexible, isn't it, than ever before? And the lines are really blurred around, how people bring their whole selves to work. And, as you say, previously, I think the way that we've approached wellbeing has been about, in the workplace, what can we do, like as all those examples that you just did to sort of not put a Band-Aid on it, but just tick a box, do something, and expect that is going to give a lift of some sort. But if we don't really look at the holistic ways people, manage their work and life, and as you say, set them up to be the best they can be, how can we expect to have great performance in an organisation? The theme for this year's Australian Summit is Make Wellbeing a Strategic Priority. You've started to touch on that, but why should it be the strategic priority for every organisation? And really, what does it mean? What are you actually asking of CEOs and C-suite to really be investing in?
Sure, and that's an excellent question. It goes back to what I was saying about giving well-being a voice, and also thinking about work, because our business is called Wellbeing at Work. And I guess what we've been doing over the last decade is really trying to understand what work is. And a core part of our belief is that work, something we do every day, should be an enhancer of well-being rather than a detractor. I think a lot of us in the West, and we work with Gallup, that gives us access to the state of well-being across the world. And what that really shows is that as much as 85% of people are not engaged in their work, which is staggering. When you think about it, it's staggering, because life is very short. In the great scheme of things, if you're spending an enormous amount of your time not engaged and just waiting for the time to pass, then you're really waiting for your life to pass. And so why should leaders take well-being at work seriously? Because people are a huge part of an organization, a huge part. It's a massive asset. You hear many CEOs say that, but they may not actually put any kind of investment into that. But when you think about people, and I can share my own experience, the reason I'm running a business called Wellbeing at Work is it's not something I planned to do when I was at university. My career was in marketing. I was chief marketing officer. I grew up in publishing, and I realized now one of the gifts of growing up in publishing was that I was given a lot of management responsibility very early, and I learned how to cope with change, because the publishing industry dramatically changed from almost day one in terms of the impact of the internet. So at 24, I was managing 7 staff. So it was such a stressful experience for me, because A, I didn't even know the job properly, and B, suddenly everyone's problem was my problem, and I was not able to deal with it. So that was the opposite to Wellbeing at Work. So that when I go back to that period, it was the opposite to Wellbeing at Work. I never felt I could rest. I felt incompetent, let's say, in terms of dealing with the management issues. Everyone kept coming to me with their problems, and I just saw it as a necessary evil. What shifted was when I left that company, because sometimes you learn the hard way, and that was my kind of hard experience. And then I shifted, because I left there feeling I just never want to manage anybody ever. I just want,
hard job.
Hard job. So I then moved to another company, and I had a very different philosophy, because then I got a really good leader. It shows the power of leadership. And he actually reframed the necessary evil to actually, that is my job. My job is to coach the ball and really enable people to be their best selves. And when I got that, everything shifted for me. So as my teams grew and I was managing hundreds of people, everything kind of shifted, because I took that philosophy, and I guess I understood that community was really important, and workplaces are communities of people. And I worked for one company for 15 years, so I had the opportunity to really experiment and understand. And it was that 15 years where I really learned about wellbeing at work, but never actually used those words. So now, of course, we've got language that really talks about the importance of culture. And I've seen now there's a lot of research that really links business performance, sustainable business performance, with positive culture. So if you're actually tracking, measuring, investing in your culture, it's a bit like brand. Brands are really, really important. My background's marketing, but many people don't get that. They think, logo and nice colors, and that's it. But sorry, my son's come back and just shouted, so that's kind of distracted me. But the power of brand is like the power of culture. They're like one coin. And when you really get that and you invest, it's the short term versus the long term. It's like health. If you invest in your health, your physical health, then your future self thanks you. And it's the same in an organization. Why should an organization invest in the well-being of their people? Their future organization, their future shareholders, their future employees will thank them because they'll enjoy the benefits of the future. And so that's why we believe that well-being should be a strategic priority. That's why we have worked hard to give this intangible concept of well-being some structure and voice. And now there's data that supports it. And you need the data to be able to have serious business conversations with leaders. And 10 years ago, we didn't have the data. It was much more faith-based. Whereas now there is evidence, longitudinal studies that really do demonstrate that. And I suppose the next question, which is what we do through our summits, is talk about the how, because we can describe and explain the business case really persuasively. CEOs will get that, CFOs will get that, everyone gets that. The challenge is, well, what do we do? And that's when we come back to change. And that's where I realized that my experience, like you never know the value of an experience until some point in the future, so that enormously stressful experience that I told you, where I was like starting my career, like it was a nightmare experience. I never felt I had time to breathe because there was so much going on. But that has proved extremely beneficial because it showed me what work can be like and the impact that would have on productivity, on community, on everything. And we can shift it the other way. And this is why now the whole person strategy, which aligns perfectly with the work that you do, when you really understand the whole person, and you don't even need to use the word well-being, but you really understand a person, you are interested in that person, you invest in that person feels valued, that person feels cared for, that person feels safe. Then, of course, that person is going to be loyal to your organization. That person will stick around. Your retention will be good. You'll have advocates in the market. Everything becomes easier. So my belief, having done this work now for a while, is that employees should be treated like your key customers, because it always surprised me when I work with big companies and they have a key account strategy, which means that those key accounts are given this gold star premium treatment, but the employees in the same organization can be treated like they're just they should be grateful that they actually have a job, and that kind of attitude doesn't lead to a high performance culture. It gets things done, but it doesn't lead to that health that we spoke about before.
Yeah, it's often people that are your USP in business. I mean, there's plenty of organizations that do exactly the same thing as another organization. They sell the same product, often have the same service terms and so on, but it's actually the people that often are the people that, deliver the USP for that company.
100%.
Right. So let's talk about the summit.
Yes.
What should business leaders and practitioners expect from the summit this year? Who have you got coming? What are you most excited about?
It's interesting. So the summit, going back to what I was saying, what the summit tries to do, the summit is called Wellbeing at Work. Our business is called Wellbeing at Work. So what we try to do, obviously, is model what Wellbeing at Work looks like through the summit. So the summit happens now in 22 cities around the world. So it's very much focused on different regions. It started in London, started in the UK, and we had our 10th anniversary in London just a couple of months ago now, or last month actually. So now Australia is the last summit in Sydney and in Melbourne. So it's spread across 3 days. We have a day and a half in Sydney, and then a day in Melbourne. And we really try to make sure that it's not just a summit where we have really good speakers, which we have got, and have great, panel discussions, but the summit in itself provides space for leaders to think about this topic, have these kinds of discussions, challenge their own thinking about things, because sometimes we think my organization can't change, but it can. So that's a summit. And then we also try to ensure that every single touch point actually supports people's well-being, and by well-being helps them to feel better than they started. So we're working with, from a venue point of view, we always work with organizations that really role model these behaviors themselves. So in Sydney, we're at Salesforce's office, which is beautiful, and it's got like stunning views of Sydney Harbour. So as soon as you walk in there and you see the harbour, it's like, wow, this is amazing. So you feel better. In Melbourne, we're working with Medibank, and again, they have a brand new building that was only opened in August, and that's actually built around employee wellbeing. So it's really interesting to actually see. So venue's great. Food experience, like this has been a big sort of personal kind of mission of mine, is to kind of really elevate the food experience, because at our events we don't, we don't serve people croissants and things like that, because it's about helping people be their best. And so we're working with the Compass Group, who are creating like an amazing food experience. And because I'm studying neuroscience for leadership at the moment, so we've actually brought the chef together with the neuroscientists to ensure that we're creating a menu which is optimized for brain performance, so helps us prime. And then we've got movement, we've got music, like lots of things that we know support well-being. Like we all know that music has the power to shift brains. We know that movement's really important. So that's the kind of context, because we're priming people to have serious conversations, to listen to we've got Lisa Kari, who's an Olympic swimmer in Australia, or was an Olympic swimmer. And, she's now very much focused on women's health and how to really support women's health. So we're having discussions around where people are, how do you support your community? Because we're at a time now where we have 5 generations working together. And so those external personal pressures will come into the work. But if your organization is sensitive, then we can support people through their life journey, wherever they are. So we're talking about the things that will impact people. Financial well-being, we're talking about, which is a big one. We're talking about how to support people from a mental health point of view. And one of the biggest topics that we talk about, because it has the biggest impact, is leadership behavior. Because leadership behavior, and how do you create a more compassionate organization? Leadership behavior, everybody says it, the leaders, if you change the leadership behavior or the mindset of the leaders, then that has the most positive ripple effect across the entire organization. So we have a big focus on that. We're talking about measurement. So coming back to, how do you make wellbeing a strategic priority? How do you bring in some of the data, some of the metrics that really can demonstrate impact? And then we also have a lot of workshops that are very focused on specific topics, where people can self-select and go along and have discussions about so many different topics that are relevant to where they are right now. So the last thing I would say is, what we try to do with Wellbeing at Work is, A, role model the behavior, as I've said, and B, leave people better than they started. That's the minimum for me, but also provide the space to have organic conversations. So we call our networking breaks conversation time, because we know that one of the massive benefits of going to a conference or any event is that you don't know who you're going to meet. And sometimes those conversations can lead to deep relationships that lead to transformation. I know that's from my own life experience, and I'm sure you have many examples in your own life experience. It's like, oh, if I didn't go to that event, I wouldn't have met that person. It's the same with my own wife, actually. Had I not gone to that event, I wouldn't have, so like there are so many things that when you reflect and you track and you look at that journey, you can actually see that. So I invite people to join us. You'll be there, Emma, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in person. And, I invite people to join us, to show up with the curiosity that can really kind of help them to learn or validate what they already are doing, and just feel supported, just feel that we're not alone. The people who come tend to be responsible for people and culture. And when you're kind of running those jobs, it can feel like everyone's problem is your problem. And we're dealing with an enormous amount of change. I described my early life experience, and that was a huge amount of change then, but it was just beginning. It's accelerated over the last 20, 30 years. And it's going to get faster. So the more resilient and the more tools that we have to be able to support ourselves, then the less burnout experiences we'll have, and the more we'll be able to thrive and to flourish and to enjoy life and enjoy our work and be our best version of ourselves.
Well, I think it's a great time of year to be attending this summit because we're coming to the end of the year, and it's a great opportunity to really reflect on how your year has gone and what is it that you would like to do differently in 2025. And you've got to do something different to get a different result. So it's well timed. I hope others will join, and I'm really looking forward to being there. So I will see you very soon.
I really
Thanks
look
for
forward to
having
it.
this session. This is a great chat. Thanks,
Thanks so
Lawrence.
much, Emma. Thank you.
See you.
Bye.